I don't believe my work life would have ever been what it has been if it wasn't for John Carpenter.
He's who he is, because he is the authority.
He sees the world differently than anybody else. He sees it slightly askew.
He understood that in order to become successful, you had to have a name recognition.
He's in the business of, he likes to, he wants to shock you.
In a career that spans over 3 decades, John Carpenter has made over 20 films. A private and fiercely independent figure, Carpenter often writes, edits, directs and composes the music for his films all by himself. Always an enigma, Carpenter has been called the Prince of Darkness, the pornographer of violence and the patron poet of the fantasy film.
I was born in 1948 in Carthage, New York. Dad was a PhD in music, played the violin. I lived up there until my dad got a job in southern Kentucky, teaching at a university.
This is Kentucky, the bluegrass state. More than 40,000 square miles of rolling, fertile land.
So we
East of the
moved,
Mississippi River,
the family moved down to Bowling Green, Kentucky.
population is mainly rural. Farmers,
And I think probably that was the biggest influence on my filmmaking career, because my family and I, we were very out of place there. This was the Bible Belt in the Jim Crow South in the old days, okay? We were Yankees, and I had no idea where I was, what was going on, who these people were, what their beliefs were about. So I felt very much an outsider. I think I found my love of life and my survival in both music and movies.
I tell you, from its size and its appearance, this thing came from outer space.
I fell in love with movies, all kinds of movies. I just loved the experience of going but watching them, and the idea that somebody would direct them was fascinating to me. I just think I discovered that when I was about 8 or 9 years old. My mom and I went to the movies, and we went to see It Came from Outer Space, which is an early 3D movie. The opening sequence, this meteor comes shooting across the sky and blows up. I was very young at the time, and that profoundly frightened me. I jumped up and yelled, ran, because I thought I was in danger. When I got to the back of the theater, I thought, man, but that's cool. I want to see a little bit more of that.
Let me see you as you really are.
I was especially attracted to the kind of horror sci-fi world. That was really interesting to me. EC Comics was a big influence on me. Weird Science, yeah, things like that. Tales from the Crypt, I love that kind of stuff.
John and I were probably, among the hundreds or thousands of people that were under the bedspread with a flashlight because they weren't allowed in the house. I don't know what it was like in Kentucky, but I grew up in the Bronx in a Catholic family, and I had to sneak all that stuff.
But this was back in the 50s and 60s. There wasn't a lot of opportunity back then to have friends who enjoyed the same thing. It's not like it is today. Today, popular culture rules, where back then it was, if you loved something like that, you were kind of an outsider and weird. We didn't have a television, so I wasn't a TV addict at all. Did see Elvis when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show, though, at somebody else's house. I remember that. I've been profoundly influenced by my dad and his love of music. Music's second nature to me. It's just something I've always grown up with.
His father's influence wasn't confined to music alone.
My dad had a home movie camera, and he gave it to me when I was 8. And there was an editing splicer, a projector, a screen. So I decided to make my own little films. And I learned a lot of very simple techniques about movie making.
As Carpenter grew older, his fascination with films would also increase.
As I kept saying, I wanted to be in the movie business and be a director. My dad said, "Oh, you don't want to do that." Not really. Why don't you get a good job, you know? But that was the typical of the times, you know. People like me from this little town didn't get to be movie directors. It wasn't possible. It was 1968, and I had to make a decision about what I was going to do with my life. I was making good money in the rock and roll band, meeting girls and making bucks and playing. But I thought, now's the time to do something about this love of movies. If I'm going to do something now, do it now. I got accepted at USC, which was known as the best film school in the world. So off I went. And it was a very different place in those days. This was during a lot of the unrest over the Vietnam War. So that was going on as a backdrop.
Stop the bombing and stop the war.
A lot of radicals going on around there. It was 1968, 69, 70. But that aside, I learned everything, every basic idea about filmmaking that I now have from film school. Camera, sound, lighting, mixing, acting, writing, editing.
I bet you
This is it. This is the one.
exactly the ones we
cut
used.
on Bronco Billy.
I mean,
and
why
John
would it...
Carpenter would sit here and he'd go like this when he saw a cut. He'd go, and that'd be the cut.
I met John probably in 1967, 68, when I went to film school at the University of Southern California. That was my first relationship with John. We both came out of the 60s wanting to be rock stars. We wound up creating a kind of fictitious rock group called the Coupe de Villes. And we would do the scores for some of the movies that we did.
One of the earliest scores that Carpenter created was for a short student film, The Resurrection of Bronco Billy. The film was a gentle elegy for the Western. Like the young Carpenter himself, the main character is an outsider who fantasizes about becoming a cowboy hero. Bronco Billy won an Academy Award and became the first student film to achieve a nationwide commercial release.
Sometimes at film schools, people would stand out. They're just, you can tell there's something going on there. You couldn't tell in advance and couldn't predict John Carpenter's success, but you certainly knew he had his own way of doing things. He was just plain talented. And he was also a leader in his own viewpoint of how to make a film.
Carpenter, of course, was the one that really knew at a very young age how to take the tail by the horn by the tail, the something by the something, the bull by the leg. And he was the one that knew how to go into the real world and get a job.
Why did he know?
I have no idea. You know, that's a good question to ask John Carpenter.
And the film which gave him his first professional break was Dark Star, which Carpenter himself described as Waiting for Godot set in space. It began as a student project, which was then reworked for commercial release.
We just didn't have any fear. That was the crazy thing about it. We believed that we could make a feature. And we did. Not that it's a great movie. It's painful in some ways to watch now, but when you realize for its time and realize how young we were and how little we knew, it's an interesting accomplishment.
Sergeant Pinback calling bomb number 19. Do you read me, bomb?
Bomb number 19 to Sergeant Pinback. I read you. Continue.
Doing a science fiction movie that took place in outer space, space suits, special effects, was unheard of, really, at film school. But he had the kind of genius of Dan O'Bannon to help him in the midst of all that. Dan was using, I think, old egg crates and painting them up and sticking them on parts of the ship to make it look, give it some modeling. But if you look closely, you realize that these were all kind of silly things. And he did a wonderful pastiche, of creating this world with absolutely no money. I mean, it was just with trash, but it looked pretty neat.
It started out as a student film, it became a feature film, was recut, reworked, rescored, and it was a real, again, another big giant learning experience about Hollywood and the movie business, and what does it all mean, and how do you get something from an idea to a feature.
Carpenter's follow-up to Dark Star was the low-budget Assault on Precinct 13, a stylish and edgy siege thriller set in a decaying suburb of Los Angeles.
That was my second film, and that was a movie that didn't get a lot of attention in the United States. It was released to mixed business and not great reviews, but in Europe, in England, especially at the London Film Festival, it was liked. That was kind of the beginning of my career.
When you look at Assault on Precinct 13, it's a bunch of people pushed together in a tight, tense situation, and because of the people that they are, they have to overcome the situation, but they don't overcome it by doing an awful lot of sitting around and talking about it. They overcome it by being the guys that they are.
I met John when I interviewed with him to become the script supervisor on Assault on Precinct 13. We had a lot of, common references, things like Howard Hawks' love of his movies and things like that. And so my first working experience with John was on the set of Assault on Precinct 13.
Hill and Carpenter began a romantic relationship, and she also went on to produce many of his films. The first of their collaborations was Halloween. Shot on a shoestring budget, it was for a while the most successful independent horror film of all time, and it firmly established the slasher genre in the mainstream of American movies. The film focuses on a chilling psychopathic killer, Michael Myers, who wreaks havoc in an ordinary American town, much like the one in which Carpenter was raised.
When I saw Halloween, I thought it was the perfect horror movie. I thought it was the quintessential horror movie because it just stood right up and said, here it is, guys. This is what it's about. Don't worry about the causes. Don't worry about anything else. Here's this guy. He is going to get you. And And at the end, order's not restored in the end of that either. He's still out there somewhere.
What John said was that if you can create a real sense of these people being real, tree-lined streets, girls walking home talking about boys, school books, knee socks, real places in real time, and give the audience enough of that screen time with those real people. When you start to introduce elements that are unreal, you will believe they're happening because you believe where you are.
Michael? It is true that Michael Myers is loony in the best kind of horror film sense of the word. But the reason that Halloween works is because he's not actually even human. That at the beginning, Michael is a child. By the time he comes back, he's the shape. He's not a person anymore. So what Carpenter is doing there with his co-writer is turning madness into the supernatural thing, because Michael is so crazy, he actually ceases to be human and he becomes, this immortal boogeyman. All the tropes that we now think of as terribly cliched, the killer's point of view, the build-up to the shocks, the people in danger, all those things are sort of laid out in Halloween in a very straightforward way. And the problem with watching it now is that you think when you watch it now that you're watching a bunch of cliches. And of course, Halloween was the thing that made them cliches. It worked because it was so simple, because it was so straightforward. One of the reasons it is that simple is they simply didn't have a lot of money.
The budget was tiny and the technology was tiny that they could have, and they had one trailer for everything. They had the smallest, dumpiest little production offices on Cahuenga Boulevard in Hollywood, in the back of this building. You have to remember the spirit that the movie was being made in. And, John and Deborah, these hippies, these kind of young, rock and roll kind of people. So it wasn't like it was like great filmmakers. It was just they were these kind of weird people.
In the true spirit of low-budget filmmaking, everyone lent a hand.
On the opening shot of the movie, I am the hands of the little boy, and who reaches in, takes the knife, and carries the knife through the house and up to the girl, the sister.
One of Carpenter's old pals from film school, Nick Castle, was also roped in to play the shape itself.
He always laughed because, I was the nicest guy in the world. That was my thing. In fact, when I was in high school, I was voted senior most friendly. But John always kind of looked at that with skepticism. He said, I know there's a dark side underneath there, Castle. And I remember him always saying that. And that's probably his kind of ironic twist on the shape, that the guy that's supposed to be the nicest guy in the world is behind the mask. And I know there's something evil there.
Tommy, please! Tommy, hurry up! Tommy, please! Tommy, please!
Tommy, get upstairs.
What is it, boy?
Get upstairs, get Lindsay, lock the bedroom door. Do as I say!
The boogeyman is...
Hurry!
What Carpenter does is to take a series of situations in which there is somebody in a situation of danger, usually a sexual situation, and just play it to the hilt. I mean, you think about the Halloween set pieces, there's really, 5 or 6 set pieces, and that's the whole film. The opening sequence with that incredible, it's not Steadicam, it's Panaglide, it's very early, has now become so imitated. The killer's point of view, we see him stalking around the house, going up the stairs, singing. It's just an extraordinary opening.
A Steadicam, or Panaglide, is basically a camera system that attaches to the operator. It's a gyroscopic system. You wear the camera. You can use it in place of a dolly shot. You can walk up and down stairs. And it's used all the time now. I suppose my sense of composition has always gone in movies to Panavision or CinemaScope or widescreen. Basically, it's a rectangle.
If you look at that frame size and you telescope it and you watch it from the beginning to the end, it begins to get more claustrophobic. So at the end of the movie, we're inside this closet in this small box. And so Jamie, as Laurie Strode, when she starts the movie, has a very big canvas by which to work with. And as we go through the movie, the canvas gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
So I would have the shape, or the killer in Halloween, either appear in the background of a scene or in direct foreground. Okay, this shoulder, or over his shoulder or something. And accompany that with some sort of a musical sting, this little kind of an ugly electronic sting to keep you on the edge of your seat, because he's everywhere. He's behind you, he's in front of you, he's all over the place in the dark.
People still, to this day, are shocked when I tell them that you don't see one drop of blood in Halloween. You never see any blood. When the people are killed, there's a glimpse of the knife. You know, Michael Myers holds the knife up, we cut to the victim, the knife is stabbed, and then you cut to the victim's face as he dies.
Hello?
I do think that people were surprised by it. I think nowadays you know Halloween so well that you think, oh, well, nobody could be really scared by this. But when Halloween opened in cinemas, it worked because it scared audiences, not because it really impressed critics in the way that perhaps Assault on Precinct 13 did, but because it really scared audiences. And it made everyone realise that there was money to be made in their slasher hills.
With only a $300,000 budget, the hugely successful Halloween went on to gross over $75 million worldwide. One of the many reasons for its success in terrifying audiences lay in the music, composed by Carpenter himself.
I got a pair of bongos for Christmas. I can't remember why particularly. And my dad was showing me 5/4 time, teaching me what the difference is between that and 4/4. And basically, the rhythm that I learned to play was the theme from Halloween. It's in 5/4 time. Boom, 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 boom. It's directly the same thing. All I did was apply it to the piano.
I've run into little beginner piano students, and they'll run into me and go, "Oh, look what we can play." And the little kid is so happy with themselves. And it's like the modern chopsticks. It's so simple, but when you think about it, it works. All this art is a communication, so John selected those notes in that rhythm and doing it on a piano as the communication which now is associated with that image. And this theme and Michael Myers are inseparable.
I mean, the tension that comes from his insistent rhythms and the fact that you know what's coming, or something is coming, and it changes and it shifts, and he's terrifically able to follow that.
Look at how effective Herman's music was to Psycho. I mean, you take the music out of Psycho and it's a little flat. The music is very important. The Exorcist. Tubular Bells. If you were Tubular Bells and didn't see the movie, you'd say, well, it's a pretty interesting song. It's kind of neat. It kind of repeats. You put it to that movie, and it's suddenly a really frightening thing.
John's music woke me up to the idea that you don't need to punctuate with orchestra and with you don't have to be manipulative in that expansive a way.
My music's like carpet. You have come into an apartment. You hire me to put carpet down. I'm going to put a carpet underneath your feet. It's going to support you, but you're not going to notice it after a while. It's going to be invisible. So the music needs to be invisible. It needs to just be under there and support what it is that's going on in the scene.
The music is like his vacation. That's how he gets away from the editing and the dealing with the studio and the publicity and all that sort of thing. And he just comes over and he just like turns off the phone and he plays. And it's just fun.
I don't want somebody telling me how to do it, so I'm not going to tell anybody else how to do it. I would never deem to do that.
He really gives you that feeling that, okay, you're going to do something for me. It's not going to be what I would do myself if I could do what you're going to do. But that's fine, because I know I'm going to enjoy it, and I will take the best you can give me and put it in my movie.
One of the things John said to me, he says, Alan, there's only one thing about doing the score for this thing, he says. The only rule is there are no rules.
John's one of the few people, because he has such a good grasp on music, it's never a problem for him. He's right up to it. Knows when he should be in there playing something, or knows when he should have somebody else play something, or knows when there should be absolute quiet.
When Carpenter went on to make The Fog, he extended the supernatural elements of Halloween into a full-blown Gothic chiller. The story of The Fog finds a band of ghostly sailors returning from the dead to wreak vengeance on the people of a small fishing town.
We actually got the idea of The Fog when we were in England to show Assault on Precinct 13 at the London Film Festival, and we took a trip out to Stonehenge. And we looked across the meadow, and there was this pulsating fog in the distance. And John said to me, "What do you think's in that fog?" And I said, "Ghosts." And he said, "Let's write a fog story." One weekend, John and myself set out, starting like the bottom of California and driving all the way up the state till we found the perfect lighthouse.
Oh, the location for The Fog was just, I just came upon Inverness, California, and eventually ended up buying a house there. It's just a gorgeous place. And this little lighthouse down there. And that's what I said, here we are. This is The Fog. This is where it takes place.
One night he called me in Canada, having arrived at the Point Reyes National Seashore and the lighthouse in Inverness, and said, "Well, I found the place that I want to live out the rest of my life. I want to die here. This is it. This is the most incredible country I've ever seen."
Just, up the coastline is Bodega Bay, where they shot the birds. So it's sort of coincidental, but I think it probably was that same sort of desolate, isolated shoreline that Hitchcock fell in love with, and so did we.
The lighthouse was down 365 steps. The camera equipment, the camera operators, everything had to be carried down this just straight, heartbreaking flight of stairs. Once you got down there, you didn't want to go back up.
John Carpenter and Adrienne Barbeau got married prior to us shooting The Fog, and it was sort of interesting because for me, it was very difficult because John and I had been a relationship, a couple, prior to that.
To be honest, my memories of The Fog really were about my friend Deborah and how difficult it was because of Adrienne. I really do feel that it was one of those things where, it was difficult. I mean, it was just difficult.
And so while they were on their honeymoon, I was writing Stevie Wayne, which I think is probably the best character Adrienne's ever played, which is the star of The Fog.
The first day we started The Fog, we'd only been married a couple months. We drove to work in separate cars, and we were very professional on the set. I don't think we had lunch together or anything. We were very professional. And at the end of the day, one or the other of us said to the other one, this isn't very much fun, and then we lightened up,
I think I'll go to Vancouver now.
John couldn't believe that I didn't get any jobs after Halloween. I got no jobs. The only jobs I got after Halloween was an episode of Charlie's Angels, where I played a lesbian golfer. They never knew I was a lesbian. I made her gay, inside, internally. And I did a Love Boat episode with my mother.
Come on! Come on! Go! Go!
The coupling of Halloween and The Fog then led to other horror films going, ooh, we should put her in the movie because she's sort of that girl now. And then that's how that really took off. It was really the second movie that made that happen. I remember we were in, shooting Poor Man's Process in a studio somewhere where it was just, inside, and young grips were running lights by the side of the car. And John was literally standing by the camera going like, ooh, here I come, I'm the bad fog. And it's like, John, give me a break here. I'm trying to look scared.
In a similar style to Halloween, Carpenter shuns gory effects in favor of the hidden horrors of The Fog.
Blake, I have your gold!
The scariest thing about The Fog is you never really see what the ghosts look like, but you know that they're there and it's scary. John really sets up around his characters this sense of foreboding, and it's the idea that something's going to come out of the shadow, you just don't know what.
Go to your room. I want to see who it is. No. Can't I stay for 2 more seconds? Okay, I'm going.
Although Carpenter was primarily making his name in horror films, many observers also began to detect similarities with the traditional Western.
I think he basically sees a lot of these science fiction pictures, some of the horror films, as Westerns. I mean, it's such a kind of simple archetypal type of drama, the Western. He used to have a bumper sticker that says, "God bless John Wayne," on the back of his Cadillac. Loved John Wayne.
One of the things that John early on expressed was a desire to remain true to the type of movies that he wanted to make and the way he wanted to make them.
I got in this business to make Westerns, and by the time I got in, they weren't making them anymore, unless it was Clint Eastwood.
Carpenter's love of Westerns dated from childhood, particularly those of Hollywood veteran Howard Hawks, such as Rio Bravo and Red River.
I had seen movies that he had made, but was unaware of him or how they connected with other films. And all of a sudden in film school, we had a retrospective. We saw all of his work from the silent films on, and it was a stunner to me. This man is unbelievable.
It is true of a number of Carpenter's best films, and it's also true of a number of, Hawks' best films. And it's guys doing stuff is what makes the film go forward.
What I loved about him was he appeared to be without technique. It appeared to be seamless and simple, but that in itself is a style that's very, very difficult to do. So I studied his angles and his way of staging and what his concerns were. His action comes fast, it comes out of nowhere, it's fast, and it's over with. And I've stolen from him as many times as I possibly can. There was a scene where a policeman throws a gun to a cop, and that's right out of Howard Hawks.
I don't want to have
to kill you, Mailer.
With what?
The Western thing is it's people at the very edge of civilization, and that is true of an awful lot of horror films, is that they're people in extremis.
The vampire movie is definitely a Western. That's an obvious Western with, you know, gunslingers and in a Western town.
When I made Vampires, I decided I was going to lean a little bit towards Sam Peckinpah in terms of style. Peckinpah is kind of a genius show-off director. He shows you, he does all these different cameras in slow motion. I decided to give it a try. So there's a little bit more violence and blood, and people splitting open and stuff like that.
When nearly all the members of his vampire hunting team are massacred, the hero, played by James Woods, sets off in pursuit of revenge.
Working with James Woods was interesting on Vampires. He was a non-traditional choice for an action hero. And he always wanted to play an action hero. He said, look, for years in my career, I've always gone through the door, the second or third person through. I usually have a suit on. I'm following Jodie Foster. I'm either the bad guy or I want to go through first with sunglasses on and a gun.
It was here.
Another of Carpenter's action heroes, the character of Snake Plissken, was also modelled on the cowboy outlaws of the West. Plissken is played by former Disney Studios child actor Kurt Russell, whom Carpenter helped to propel into the major movie league.
S.D. Plissken, American, Lieutenant, Special Forces Unit Black Blight. 2 Purple Hearts, Leningrad and Siberia. Youngest man to be decorated by the President. He robbed the Federal Reserve Depository. Life sentence, New York Maximum Security Penitentiary. I'm ready to kick your ass out of the world, war hero.
When he cast Lee Van Cleef, I just immediately thought this would be great to recall some of the movies that Van Cleef had done with Clint Eastwood. And I immediately said, you know, I hear Clint Eastwood as Snake Plissken in this kind of a movie with Lee Van Cleef.
Snake Plissken is the hero in Escape from New York, a film in which the frontier town of the Western has been replaced with a vision of urban violence and decay that reflects Carpenter's lifelong fascination with comic book styles. The story takes place in a futuristic authoritarian America in which Manhattan Island has been transformed into a top-security prison, surrounded by fences and mines.
Snake is a comic book character. You know, he's the grizzle and everything, right down to the way he moves his face and his, you know, the eye. But he's a comic book character, and he's living in a comic book world. It's this, you know, everything is slightly degraded. The place is full of street trash. It's, you know, larger than life punks, that sort of thing. And the reason that Escape from New York works as well as it does is it's made completely in keeping with that aesthetic.
Well, Snake Plissken doesn't care. He doesn't care about hurting you or saving you. He just wants to move on. He doesn't have any concern except for himself. He has no higher cause. He has no sense of righteousness or a need to set right or wrong.
You want to see him sprayed all over that map, baby? Where's the president?
Swear to God, Snake, I don't know.
Don't fuck with me.
Why do you want to know?
I want him.
I think that there's something about Snake Plissken that all boys and men sort of like. They sort of like to be like that. They'd like to live a day like Snake anyway. I know I would. I know that a large part of John's personality and my personality exists in Snake Plissken. It's a large part of who John and I are. There's no question about it. We are singular men. We are independent-minded. We are we border on anarchistic.
I think that's one of the reasons why John has kind of been outside the Hollywood box in many ways in terms of independently making his movies and having his own vision. So Snake Plissken is a part of both Kurt and John.
Playing alongside Russell was Adrienne Barbeau, Carpenter's then wife, who was chosen to play the feisty heroine Maggie.
Certain of the women characters, certain ones, I am influenced by Howard Hawks. He was very different in his approach to women. They weren't mothers and housewives. They were much tougher. They're different. They're different, funnier and sexier and more cynical. I really like that.
Your Plissken?
He wants to see Brain.
The woman who was strong and capable, and that was the kind of role he wrote, and I think he saw me as someone who could play that.
I gotta slow down a little, Snake.
I think they're 3 miles ahead, Snake.
You think?
A bigger budget sequel to Escape from New York, Escape from LA, was made over a decade later. Its immediate inspiration was the California earthquake in 1994. As with the Big Apple, Plissken's adventures in the Big Orange find him once again mixing it up with a wild assortment of friends, fiends, and foes.
We hadn't worked together in a long time, I don't know, 7 years maybe. And he said, action. I came down the hill, whatever it was. I came down the hill, did the look at the sign or something, walked on, cut, and it was like we had finished Escape from New York on Friday and started Escape from LA on Monday. It was like we had the weekend off.
Thought you might try that, hot shot. That's why the first clip is loaded with blanks. Bye-bye, Snake. Good luck. John called me and he said, I'm going to do a sequel to Escape from New York. I'm going to do Escape from L.A., and how would you like to be Lee Van Cleef? That was the way he said it, and I said, sounds great to me. It was a great part.
Kurt and John and Deborah Hill had written this screenplay. I read it. I came in, supposedly to do a reading for it. We didn't talk at all about the part. We didn't talk about the film. We wanted all the gossip on Dennis Hopper, an easy writer. It was hysterical. Later. The pay wasn't bad. The best part, though, was with John and Kurt Russell together. They have such a good, long relationship. Being allowed in, even for a moment, on that friendship, that's better than the pay.
John's an extremely loyal person who gathers around him time after time a team that he trusts, that he enjoys working with, that he knows will deliver. Because John has a tendency to work in a sort of a lower budget range. And so therefore he knows he needs people who are willing to go above and beyond the call to help him get his vision on the screen.
And in order to do that, in that kind of intensely emotionally and physically stressful situation, it's always nice to have people around you while you're working that you can trust.
John's way of making it is you create this family, you know, and you know what to expect of everybody.
Try to have a good time on the set. It's always been my philosophy. Make it a nurturing experience, but that's not always possible with some personalities. Some people need different things to create, and oftentimes it's adversity, or they need to create adversity.
When we were doing Village of the Damned, I remember there was a little power struggle there for a moment, and John said, well, you know, I'll be in my trailer when you guys want to do my movie. And he went in there and stayed there until everybody decided, oh yes, that's right, it's John Carpenter's movie. So, you know, then everybody showed back up on the set. Notice how I didn't name names.
I've seen him get hot with actors a couple times, and I would not want to have him hot at me. He's pretty scary. He may not know it, but he's a tough, skinny little white guy. You know what I mean? He's scary. He's really smart. He's like one of those smart guys that, when they come at you, you're heavily outgunned, and you know it.
I saw a picture of him in the newspaper today in Los Angeles. It scared me. He's somehow inhabited these movies a little bit. And, you know, I mean, these movies come from his head, so there's got to be something wrong with it.
Almost every new film that Carpenter released contained its share of references to Howard Hawks, and he finally took the logical step of actually reworking one of his mentor's own movies in the 1951 sci-fi thriller, The Thing. The film's plot concerns a polar expedition that discovers the frozen remains of an alien spaceship. The craft is harboring a shape-shifting organism that can mimic other forms of life. It was Carpenter's first big studio production, and the resulting controversy was to prove a turning point in his career.
Up until, quite late in his career, Carpenter was quite happy to play with fairly low budgets and to be experimental and to do, to push everything as far as possible. The best bits of Halloween or the best bits of Assault on Precinct 13 are things that are done really, the best bits of Dark Star, done on a really, really tight budget, and they have to be inventive.
Of course, with the advent of the late 70s and early 80s and filmmakers like George Romero, suddenly audiences got a taste for gore. So the climate for special effects had changed. Suddenly movies weren't necessarily just about a scary horror story, but then you suddenly needed this grotesque imagery to go along with it.
In the case of The Thing, it's, well, what if you actually could demonstrate a shape-shifting alien? What if it was possible? And together with Rob Bottin, they suddenly found themselves at a time in cinema history when they could. I think it's one of the very few special effects movies in which you genuinely go, oh! I mean, I remember seeing it for the first time, and the sequence in which the guy's head falls off and the spider legs come out and the head scuttles across the floor, and somebody looks at it and says, "You've got to be kidding." And that's the point of the film. The point of the film is you can't believe you're seeing this stuff.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
After a long and arduous shoot, The Thing was finally released to an unexpectedly hostile reception.
It really got lambasted by the critics. I mean, there were people that were so shocked that this movie was made and pointed to John directly as it's his fault. How could this guy make this movie when E.T. is out and E.T. has everyone feeling good about themselves and happy, and then suddenly this movie comes out with this shape-shifting creature that's dark.
I think had The Thing come prior to E.T., prior to Alien, it would have been enormous. It would have been huge.
Damn it, Charles, torch it!
I just think that John wanted to make a very intense character study, and then he had this maverick effects artist who brought all these creations to set, and John really gave them the freedom to execute the effects. The effects ended up, of course, in the movie, and it changed the way people looked at films for a long time.
Clear!
Clear.
It wasn't, as all these critics say, the special effects getting out of hand. It was somebody, you know, embracing what was possible and stretching the genre absolutely to its limit.
We said this is not going to be appreciated for 20 years because this monster's so bad. He's so ugly. They're not going to see the story about 12 guys and paranoia. It's just a story about paranoia and the breakdown of human beings believing in each other.
I caught a lot of criticism for what they call graphic violence. I mean, they call me the pornographer of violence on the thing, which at the time I was a young guy. Look, it really shook me up.
If you'd made a film that was that good, if you'd sat there in the editing room and looked at it before anyone else had seen it and gone, okay, right, now let's show it to them, and then it had got thrown to the walls like it did, you'd retire. I mean, it's the sort of thing that makes people give up making films. It's the sort of thing that makes you go, for heaven's sake, what do you want?
The irony of all that is the fact that recently, since The Thing has been released on Laserdisc and DVD, it has had a huge resurgence. And if you talk to anybody about that movie, that's on their top 10.
Deeply affected by the negative reaction to The Thing, Carpenter's subsequent career has moved in a number of different directions with varying degrees of critical and commercial success.
My agent said, you need to do something that you atone for your sins. You need to make something nice. So Starman, a movie later, I did Christine, then Starman came along. He said, it's going to be perfect. You know, people will like you again. You can show them that you can make a nice romantic comedy. It has kind of a nice sentimental scene in the end, and it's sweet. Really, nobody dies.
I think a lot of why Starman was his next film was to prove to a lot of people that, yes, John Carpenter is a filmmaker. He's not out to just, you know, tell all these really bleak, dark, desolate films, that he actually has a lot of different kind of movies in his repertoire.
I don't think Carpenter is a pessimist. I think actually he's a pretty optimistic guy. He's a guy having fun, even in his darker moments.
These guys are always fun to be with, because I guess maybe they get rid of all their demons doing their movies, but they're never depressing. I've known more comedians that are depressing than horror guys.
We had this big vat of churning green slime, whatever it was, that we were supposed to believe was the, you know, and I remember Donald Pleasance, God rest his soul, one of the greatest actors of all time and the most fun to be around. Here was a scene, it was on all of us as we're looking at this thing, and he's telling us biblically what happened to the deep, dark soul of God as it's churning through the cosmos and whatever he's saying, you know.
Don't you feel it?
And while he's doing it, and we're all,
like a dream,
you know, listening, you know, and really, you know, and he's going, the deep, dark, and he's making these faces, and I'm telling you, it was the hardest thing just not to howl at this guy. He was adorable.
The minute you bring out a severed arm or blood or vampire teeth, people start having a great time because it's so silly. In person, all the stuff that you see on the screen is a real joke. You know, it's hilarious. George Romero told me that all these film critics would attack his movies, but when they would come to visit him on the set, they all wanted to be the zombies. They wanted to put on the makeup and walk around and eat flesh.
In the years since Starman and The Thing, Carpenter has preferred to work on the kind of independent pictures over which he retains the maximum creative control. Many of those films have returned to his continuing preoccupation with aliens, religion, and urban decay.
I'm fascinated by religion in films. I'm always dealing with the Prince of Darkness and the Fog, and a lot of these movies have priests, and it's about religion.
It's so wonderful what you're doing, Father. Opening the church again.
Prince of Darkness contains an ambitious blend of quantum physics, theology, and gothic horror, set amidst an apocalyptic atmosphere of impending doom.
I mean, if you take movies like Escape from New York, Escape from LA, Assault on Precinct 13, They Live, a lot of these things are apocalyptic in their sense of what contemporary life is all about.
In They Live, a homage to the 1950s invasion of the body snatchers, a special pair of glasses enables the hero to recognize that an alien race is secretly controlling our everyday lives.
What's your problem? I said, what's your problem?
I loved his line about he liked to think of the ghouls as the Republicans.
Well, I've always had a little trouble with authority, I suppose. Probably when I was younger, I did. Now that I'm an old man and I'm a father, I have no problem with authority as long as it's me.
As Carpenter continues to follow his independent line, films such as In the Mouth of Madness, Village of the Damned, and The Ghosts of Mars continually reaffirm the unmistakable Carpenter trademarks of outstanding technical skill and rigorous directorial control.
Action!
If I was going to produce a movie and I only had $10 million, but I wanted it to look like 25, and I wanted it to be special in the way it looked like a 25, I probably have to call on him because he's so practiced at it. That's where his gift is. That's where his real gift is.
It's so overwhelming. It's like the Alamo. If I could, please. Thank you.
I know this, that John is a dreamer, and I hope that he is able to make that big dream of his come true. I think he's still working in that direction. I feel that all of the aspects of his abilities to express himself with music, with scariness, with humor, are all sort of coming together now, and I think as a mature artist, he's going to give us his best work down the line.
I don't believe my work life would have ever been what it has been if it wasn't for John Carpenter. You know, he's weird looking. There's no question. I wouldn't bring him over to my house. He'd scare the shit out of my kids. But I have gratitude to him for what he did for me.
I think John is a self-made man, self-made director who's been able to have an enormously successful career and not compromise in any way his vision. And I don't believe he ever will.
Action!
There are very few directors whose names mean anything to the public. And John Carpenter's means something. I suspect that part of the reason it means such a lot to him is just sheer bloody-mindedness. It's just, you know, I am a director, these are my films, here is my name above them. Thank you very much.
I've been lucky enough to have my name associated with my movies. One day I will be gone from this earth, and I want at least somebody in the future to look at my movies and realize they're mine. They may be screwed up and you may not like them, but they're my movies.